The Secrets of the Pyramid Engineers with Christopher Dunn, R.Vawter, and E.Wilson. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents, and pyramidians, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. We got a full house today. We got GMA in studio. Hey,
buddy.
And as always, my co-host Kyle.
How's it going?
Yeah, and we got a very special show today. We had Christopher Dunn on with R.Vawter and E.Wilson. The three of them have been working together more recently on the Giza power plant and other interesting lost technologies of ancient Egypt. So we have, as all of you know, we have been going through Christopher's excellent books for the past couple of months. We've been doing a deep dive into lost technologies of ancient Egypt and more recently the Giza power plant. And so we were able to get Chris on with his two colleagues to talk to them about what has been going on since the writings of those books and the more recent research. And I think we just want to get straight into that. No space weather news and no story readings and no emails from anybody. We're just going to go straight into the interview. So,
Yep. It was fantastic.
It was an excellent interview, yeah.
Hope you all enjoy it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
You know, Jimmy?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Bumper music cued.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special show for you guys today. We have Christopher Dunn with us here. He has an extensive background as a craftsman. He started his career as an indentured apprentice in his hometown of Manchester, England. He was recruited by an aerospace manufacturing company and immigrated to the United States in 1969. For the past 50 years, Chris has worked at every level of high-tech manufacturing, from machinist, toolmaker, programmer, and operator of high-power industrial lasers. He's been a project engineer and laser operations manager, and for the past 16 years, he has served as human resources director for a Midwest aerospace manufacturer. Christopher Dunn, thank you for joining us.
How's it going, buddy?
Great to be here. Great to be here. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we have been looking forward to this. We've been, as all of our listeners know, we've been going through both of your books extensively on our show for the past couple of months, and it's been a blast and has been mind-opening. We really love the history of exploration that you put in your books. Of course, your theories and ideas are also excellent, but the history of exploration in the beginning of each book that sort of lays the groundwork for how you look at these ancient structures, ancient artifacts, and everything has been fantastic. So we're really excited to have you here with us to talk about this stuff today.
Well, thanks a lot. And I've been listening to your podcasts, and I've enjoyed them immensely. You are probably the only radio host that have done such a thorough job of examining the material. Normally, somebody will ask me to come on a podcast, and I have to guide them through the material because a lot of times they haven't really examined it. But so I'm really delighted. Was really delighted to find your podcast. It was most excellent and a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been, and so I wanted to say we have our friend Archer, who is also an engineer. He's here with us in studio. Archer actually introduced us to your newest book, the
Technologies of Ancient Egypt.
Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. He was the first one that was bringing the material in, and then that made us, I was like, I got to get this book. Archer actually loaned it to me, then I ended up buying it, and then we went through it in depth on the show. So we have him here with us because he's an engineer, and he's also very much enjoyed your take on on all the artifacts, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Oh, hi, Archer. Nice. Thank you very much for recommending my book.
Oh, thank you.
And could I introduce a couple of friends of mine?
Absolutely.
Russ and Kyle? I have with me R.Vawter, who is a sound engineer, and E.Wilson, who is a engineer with Rolls-Royce in Indianapolis.
All right. Well, hello, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Yes.
And so perhaps, Robert, you can give your bio, and then Eric, so everybody knows, who they're listening to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, real quickly, I've had kind of two careers. My first career, I was a front of house sound engineer. You go to the concert, there's the guy out there with all the knobs controlling the sound. I did that for off and on for 20 years, blew my leg out and had to find another line of work. The only other thing I was really interested in was ancient civilizations. So I went back to school and worked on got an undergraduate degree in anthropology and archaeology, and then took my postgraduate work in ancient medieval philosophy. Ended up in and out of Egypt for the last 22 years.
Wow.
And I've known Chris for quite a while here, and we've been exchanging ideas. So I end up here on the podcast with you guys.
All right.
Excellent.
Eric, my friend.
Yes. Okay. My name's Eric Wilson, and as Chris said, I work for Rolls-Royce Corporation, but they're not affiliated with this research. They do enjoy it, but not directly. Right now, I'm a technology researcher. I work in the control systems department and do thermal management for electronics. I have a master's degree from Purdue University. Before going into engineering, I took aviation maintenance, and my engineering degrees were in electrical engineering and mechanical engineering. So I met Chris only in 2017, and before then I had really no interest in archaeology or these ancient sites, but I reviewed some of the things that he had put on YouTube, and it made sense. And then I looked at the back of the book and realized he lived an hour and a half away from me, so I gave him a call and we met, and we've been going since then.
All right.
Around August 2017.
Well, I think that's kind of what happened to Archer, except that they're a little farther apart. But he was like this, as he was reading the book, he was like, guys, this is how you look at this stuff. And I agree so much that like it takes an engineer's eye to see previous engineers' work. And to recognize it for what it is, right, Chris? That's a big part of what you're talking about in your books.
Yes, I mean it is. That's exactly it. Because if you look at it, I mean, I don't mean to be an elitist or critical, but if we were going to build a similar device or structure, we probably wouldn't consult with Egyptologists to do it. We would bring engineers, architects, and all kinds of different crafts and skills to accomplish the work.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it is a good point.
I definitely wouldn't ask an Egyptologist.
Maybe that is elitist and critical. Oh well.
But I mean, look, if you don't want to be building it with copper chisels and stone hammers and butt flaps, then definitely don't ask the Egyptologist.
Yeah, that's right.
The interesting thing, just a little backstory, I've been researching this since 1977 and actually debating it online since 1995 in the early days of the internet when they were using these bulletin boards, and one was called Deja News. And on one of the debates about core number 7 in the Petra Museum, one of my detractors was saying, "Well, I'm just a lone voice in the wilderness. Nobody's listening to me." And it seems like now here we are, 25 years later, and the number of engineers and technicians that are now traveling to Egypt and recognizing all the things that I pointed out over the years. I mean, the numbers are huge. Yes. So it's turning. I mean, I think that particularly in Egypt, the mindset is turning towards recognizing that their ancestors were a lot more advanced than what has been discussed in academic literature in the past. So that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. And we're trying to help that with the podcast. We're trying to, because Kyle and we're not engineers, but we are builders. We have been building things our entire lives. Our father was a builder, is a builder. Yeah. And so we recognize, at least from the building aspect, when you're looking at it in terms of like constructing something, we see like, okay, this doesn't make sense with their explanations. Now, you point out multiple times in your books, and I agree with this, that there are many ways of doing something. And right. So that just because somebody has demonstrated that something can be done one way does not mean that that's the way it was done. Right. And it requires looking more at the evidence on the site to try to figure out how they did it, instead of saying just because we have proven that it can be done this way that's how they did it. And I completely agree with that. So,
well, yes, I mean, and even today, human nature being what it is, if you have a group of guys and they get a project to do, they complete it and do it a certain way, and then that project is given to another group, that other group will do their darndest to find a different way or a better way of doing it, and not actually mirror what the other group had performed.
That's right.
So, it's like professional pride. Oh, they did it this way. Let's see if we can do it better. A competition, ego, you name it. But it exists, and I've witnessed it over the years. And so that's why I say, I don't hold firm to any particular method as long as that method will explain the evidence. And it's the evidence that is driving the bus right now, You can't come up with some crazy idea and it doesn't satisfy the evidence.
Right. That's absolutely right. So let's get more into. Kyle and I have pretty thoroughly covered your books, and so we can talk about some of that if you want. But I also want to know like what's happened since the writings of the books. What has developed since then? What have you determined since then? Like I know that you've been looking at the scan pyramid stuff. That's pretty new. So
yes, that's quite a story in itself, and. My two research associates, Robert and Eric, everything came together at a confluence when Robert and I were riding in my car. And we were talking about that, and a call comes in from Eric. And he's all excited because he'd accessed the scan pyramid information. And Eric, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, this is sort of when we first met. And I had just started studying and looking at the pyramid as a circuit, right? And to see regarding the microwave energy that would excite the king's chamber, what holes there may be in that. And Chris he set an amazing foundation, but just before I even knew about scan pyramids and what they were doing, I had contacted Chris. We met in August, and then I contacted him around October and said, hey, I've reviewed a lot of things here. And I think the southern shaft needs to have an amplifier for it to work, if it's the input to the king's chamber.
That would be the northern shaft, right, Eric?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, even me, I get them confused. I'm not that deep into it.
No problem.
Yeah, so I need an amplifier for it to work, and that's Chris. At that time, it's just a few months of knowing each other, and I a little bit ignored what I was saying, and then lo and behold, a month later, the Scan Pyramids group, who I've never heard of, says we've found a void, and they're saying it's exactly where I said I need an amplifier for your system.
Oh man!
And then I got a hold of Chris and said, hey, this void, it aligns with the shafts where I said there needs to be an amplifier. What's going on? And,
Stop ignoring me, guy.
it kind of sparked like, whoa, we need to start paying attention. I'm telling Chris, your phone's going to start ringing again. People are going to start asking, what's the take?
Yeah.
And what can I do to help? And so it kind of went from there. But just our last trip, March 2019, by chance, not organized or anything, I happened to get a whole day in the pyramid with the Scan Pyramids group, the group from France. And you might like the way that worked out. I tried to go to Red Hot Chili Peppers concert that they were having, that was happening at the pyramid. That was a once in a lifetime event.
Wow.
Barely made it in time for the ending, like 2 songs. And Ahmed El Gandhi, who handles he's a director that handled the projects. He was bummed out. He said, hey, come to work with me tomorrow. It'd be Saturday. And just spend the day so we at least have some time before you leave. And the Scan Pyramids group was there. And I'm not working with them, but was able to meet them and witness what they were doing and get some insight. And they were working in March to replace the scan plates and do a sharper, I guess, or more focused scan of the void they had found the previous year. And all I know now is they've got data, but they're going to do another scan. All of their work's been verified by another team from Japan. Right. And they're going to do a verification, and then in the fall of this year, they're supposed to release a combined official, verified statement of what this chamber really is, at least from a scan perspective. So.
Wow. So are they using the muon detection plus? Do they have other detection methods like?
From what I know, they continued with the muon detection. They had improved their equipment from the previous year, from the 2018 scans. And they were just trying to get more precise on an area they believed to, this large void.
Yeah.
It's muon detection. What I've read, and this is just from article, this is not for the Japanese group. There's an article that says they're supposed to project actually some more intense muons on the location to see if they can get a better image on their scan and compare the data.
Excellent.
So I speculate. It's no evidence. The only evidence I have is that if this is a circuit, it needs an amplifier. I speculate in that location we would want some type of crystal microwave amplifier. And it could be simply crystals. They'd be very large, I think, for the amount of energy we're dealing with to excite the microwave signal into the king's chamber.
Man, that would be amazing if that was what was in there.
But if they find it, your amplifier is going to be called the Iron Throne of Khufu, right?
Yeah, I mean, who knows what's in there? But it's not, as far as we know, it's not been disturbed. It's a chamber that's not been robbed, and undisturbed for many thousands of years.
Yeah. So no matter what's in there, it's going to be game-changing and phenomenal because it has it.
Yeah, it's going to open eyes.
That's right.
For sure.
If they tell us what's in there.
If they tell us, right. That was the other thing is that the Antiquities Department seemed to get very upset with the Scan Pyramids people the last time they released information to the public. So that was interesting. They got pretty mad that they claimed that they jumped the gun or something.
Yeah, I agree with them because they were supposed to maintain protocol.
Okay.
But I don't think anyone's hiding information.
All right.
I do really believe that the generation that's there now is waking up and realizing, well, this is different. This is not what we thought, and they're willing to bring this stuff forward. Just they're trying to maintain a government type protocol on everything.
That's very reassuring to hear, because the previous regime was not like that. So I'm glad that it's seeming to change then.
Right.
The previous regime is still there, but they are being encouraged to open their eyes a little more.
Oh, okay.
I can't say that's working all the time, but
as Chris said before, it's opening the eyes of a different group coming to Egypt. Not so all esoteric people, but engineers that see systems within,
right?
That see what Chris has discovered in machining, and realize that this thing had a specific purpose, not just a tomb.
Right. And not just that, but there seems to be evidence of massive machining projects all over the place, aside from the pyramid, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Including the pre-dynastic materials.
Yes. That's right. This goes back a long way, and it's hard to tell. We do a podcast with Randall Carlson, so we talk a lot about in that one we talk a lot about the end of the Younger Dryas period, which was very destructive, caused an extinction of megafauna, caused bottlenecks in human population. And Chris, you don't say any of this in your book, so I'm not trying to ascribe any of this to you, but Kyle and I have thought a lot about how it's very possible that there may have been a previous, more advanced civilization. What you would think of it as advanced, like a maritime civilization, a long time ago, deep in prehistory. Like Göbekli Tepe points to this kind of idea. So.
Yes, I do kind of hint at that.
Yes.
I kind of limited the scope of my work to how it was done, how the pyramids were built, and what they were built for, without much regard to the who and the time frame.
Right.
Because that's I leave that kind of work to historians and futurists to stay within my lane, so to speak, and the engineering. It is less ambiguous. I mean, it's very difficult to argue with the hard evidence. You can interpret it a different way, but the evidence speaks the loudest, and it's unambiguous, in my opinion.
That's true, and I agree with your take on, or with your with the way you've chosen to do it, with staying in your lane and here's what we see, and you're not really saying who or when. I think that's
right.
That's a powerful way to do it, because you're right. It's all about the evidence, and this evidence doesn't necessarily tell us who or when. We're looking at how and why. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about, well, what happened to the machines? Where are the machines?
Yes.
Because it's obvious that the tools that we used are not in the ancient Egyptian toolbox. And so that leaves a huge question mark on that subject.
That's right.
But it doesn't mean that the machines obviously existed, because you can see the marks that they made. But the question of where they went to, that's a totally different subject.
That's right. And machines, if they're made of metals, they may not survive very long. Metals don't. It's hard to preserve them sometimes. They corrode easily. So we've talked a lot about that too. That if you've got a bunch of machines made of metal, they're not going to stick around as long as something made of stone. So
yeah. Well, I mean, to your point that a advanced civilization existed in prehistory, I think that's self-evident. I mean, it's obvious to me that they had to have existed in order to create the products that we see there now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that a little bit, on the idea that there are multiple ways to do things. Archer gave us a presentation on the podcast about precision.
Precision. Yeah.
And, it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down, because when you're trying to figure out, well, how do you get flatness to begin with?
Yeah.
Well, how do you first, because you start off with, you have these measuring tools that you can measure flatness, and we were trying to figure out, well, how do we know that those measuring tools are flat?
Yeah.
And so he kind of led us down that rabbit hole. And is there more than one way to get flatness, or did they have to basically rub 3 slabs of stone together until they arrived at that? And then if they did, where are those stones? Where are their surface plates?
Yeah, that's the precision on flat surfaces. I mean, that's kind of two-dimensional stuff, and a lot that's easier to understand. And we know that in history they were creating flat surfaces when they developed the printing industry. So that was a part. I think as far as precision flat surfaces, I don't think they existed before the printing industry. I mean, the precision and accuracy of optical lenses is well known, but that is not, those are not necessarily flat surfaces. And then you move to the Industrial Revolution, where flat surfaces were necessary for machine tools, and not just for the machines, but also the surfaces that you had as references to measure the distances and accuracy of the parts that you were making.
Right. So
that's our history of flat surfaces, and so if you go back to the Industrial Revolution to find something that you can compare with some of the artifacts that you find in Egypt, then you're bringing the capabilities of the ancient Egyptians forward thousands of years compared to what they have been credited with in the past.
Right. Yeah, that is pretty astonishing.
Right. So I guess I didn't actually get to asking the question, but is there more than one way to arrive at a flat 2-dimensional surface?
Well, you do have the 3-plate method that is well known. There is comparative measurements where you use a surface that is known to be flat, like a gauge or something like that. And then there are ways to remove material by comparing. You use like a die on a surface and rub a plate over it, a precise plate, and it will reveal high spots. And so you just scrape away at the high spots until you have a flat surface. And then, with modern machines, you can create fairly flat surfaces to within a half thousandths with a milling machine. And if you want to go closer, like to 10,000ths or 1/10,000th of an inch, then you go to precise grinding equipment. And then, of course, the finishes. You if you wanted a very, very fine finish, a lot of times you would go to lapping the surface. But there's so there are different methods.
But these methods
to apply, but it depends how flat you want your surface.
Okay, and a lot of those methods that you mentioned require previous flat surfaces, like in order to have a milling machine in the first place.
I mean, that's your that is your datum. I mean, the ways on the machine are essentially control the precision on the artifact that you're creating, or the workpiece. And if you don't have an accurate machine, then you're not going to have an accurate workpiece. And that's what the development of technology has been for since the Industrial Revolution, is actually working out the variables in the manufacturing process. So the machines today are much more precise than they were 50 years ago.
Right.
A lot of secondary operations had to be performed 50 years ago, such as, you have skilled fitters who would actually scrape bearing ways or bearing surfaces and stuff like that because the machines couldn't get the surface finish or the accuracy on them.
So, one question I have for you is if you were to try to give a general idea based on the evidence you saw in the artifacts, in the buildings, in the structures, where would you place the people that made those artifacts and structures in terms of what we think of in terms of modern technology? Like, what time period would you place them in general? Like during the Industrial Revolution, or would it be more recent?
I think it would be more recent. I could torture myself and try to imagine creating a Ramses statue with tool and die making equipment 50 years ago, but it would be torture to try and accomplish that.
Especially to do it 4 or 5 times and have it be exact, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got precision, and you've got symmetry, and you've got geometry, and it's all these elements working together: 3-dimensional geometry, 3-dimensional surfaces that are extremely precise. And when back in the old days when we used to make dies and stuff like that, they would profile them. They would create a wooden model of what they wanted, which are not necessarily ultra precise in themselves, and then they would put them on a machine that would follow the model with a stylus that moved the axes on the machine to allow the cutting of a metal object. So say you were trying to create a car body or something like that. That's how you would do it. You would create a mold. But these machines were called Keller machines. They were electrical impulse kind of movement on them. There were other machines that used hydraulics. But essentially, if you go back and you compare a car that was made in 1974 and the fit and finish on those cars and compare them to a car that was manufactured last week, you would find a remarkable difference. And it's not just the development of machine tools and the accuracy, it's the controls as well. CAD CAM, stuff like that. I mean, it's a huge leap to say, okay, yeah, the ancient Egyptians had CAD CAM. Oh,
right.
Get out of here. Come on, you got to be kidding. No, well, look at the product and then say, okay, what is the minimum? What is the minimum that you would need to create this thing? And a lot of people have actually proposed, well, you can mirror something by taking a piece of string, and then as soon as I hear string, that's when I shut down. I'm like, okay, I can't continue this conversation if he's talking about a piece of string achieving that kind of accuracy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, we completely.
It doesn't work.
We completely agree. Those little diagrams they have of the guy holding the string to get the perfect corners or whatever on the flat. I'm just like, no.
Maybe if they said chain, you'd stick around for a few more sentences.
Oh boy. Yeah. So I choked on my coffee on that
one. Yeah, you got to be careful drinking coffee around Kyle. He's cracking jokes.
Yeah. All right. Sorry about that.
No so problem. That's the idea that they. I mean, I guess I'm thinking of your thought process on that it seems more likely that they were able to do this with CAD than actually like the stylus type mirroring or machining. As far as the Ramses statues are concerned, that is quite a leap, like in technology or in technological advancements. So
yeah,
but it seems like
engineers, they let their imaginations soar.
Yes.
Archaeologists and Egyptologists would rather we didn't do that with ancient artifacts, but that's our nature.
Yeah, but I mean, still this still goes back to the idea that there's more than one way of doing it. So yes, there are these other ways that you know of, that we went through these processes in the throughout the Industrial Revolution and since then, but they would be tortuous, as you said, to try to achieve the things that you see there in Egypt. So it's more like what you're saying is that it seems more likely that it was easier for them. They were using more modern technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, without the benefit of modern technology, machines and methods, it would be. I don't know if it could be done. And the thing is, I try to be fairly conservative in what I would argue for. Some of my colleagues, engineers, think I'm too conservative, and I should be more forceful in arguing for CNC machines, for instance. Mm-hmm. So, that's some people. It seems to be too obvious to them. I being the front guy on this, I've already taken enough slings and arrows.
Yeah.
And I try to be a little more careful and conservative.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you did bring up this idea in your book that, and it wasn't a theory or anything. It was just sort of conjecture that if, for example, the Egyptians had, say, solved some of the problems of dealing with gravity, then they wouldn't need the wheel, first of all.
Yeah, you'd be freed from the wheel.
Right. But that would also make the machining of massive pieces of stone much easier. If you could move that stone around instead of the machine tool, or even that the machine tool, you didn't have to worry about gravity so much with this massive machine that was going to be cutting on the stone, or vice versa.
I don't know. The way technology is being developed now, if you're looking at the way drones actually work,
yes.
Is it possible that there may be some time in the future where within a holographic or a matrix, you have a piece of stone and then a drone that has a ultrasonic cutting tool that is actually cutting away, being guided by some kind of very, very precise GPS system.
Huh.
Yeah,
That sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But
well,
think about it.
Not really. I've got a very high-tech drone. It's one of the brand newer ones, and they've already got software that I have. I haven't tried it yet, but you can program extremely precise pathways and the drone uses GPS and other sensors and everything, and then it will fly. Like, you don't have to control it. You can program the pathway in 3 dimensions, and then the drone will fly it precisely where you can basically maneuver it between very narrow things, in between trees, and it has automatic obstacle avoidance. So no, I think that you're right. You put a few more instruments on that drone, and it could do that for sure. You'd have battery power problems. That's our main issue with drones, is battery power. But
but that's because they're using fans to create lift.
That's right.
Movement. But if you had some kind of anti-gravity technology that you could employ, it would you wouldn't need as much power. I suspect.
Yes.
You wouldn't need as much power.
Yeah, Chris, could I interject something here?
Sure. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. There is one rather obscure text that does speak about an anti-gravity technique to build the pyramids. It's a Coptic text called the Masudi Scroll. You may have heard of it. It's in the Bodleian Library at Oxford.
Haven't heard of that one. Let's hear about it. Well, we're writing it down.
Basically, it describes building a road out of a strange material, and the priests would strike the road with their sticks, and the rocks would float.
Oh.
And they describe the priests being stationed about a bow shot away from each other, so that the image that comes to mind is some sort of a relay station that your charges are being put into this road and moving the rocks a certain amount of distance to keep them under control. you wouldn't want to put a big charge in and shoot it down the pathway and have the new guy on the block sitting there at the end saying, "I'll stop it. It's still got mass." You know, so that's the only text that I know of that describes anything like that, but it does exist.
But but so you saying that reminds me that there are, I don't know if they're texts exactly, but there are plenty of legends, myths, oral traditions that talk about a lot of these ancient sites, Baalbek, Nan Madol in Oceania, these places being, built by people who use some sort of sound or whistling or trumpets or something like that, and the stones would float into place. So yeah, there are. You're right. There are legends about that. So
yeah, I think the Tibetan monks supposedly they used the alpine horn.
Yeah,
alpine horns and drumming.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's of course the Vaimanika Shasta, the one that talks about the Indian Vedic text that talks about flying machines. So
that would be the Mahabharata and inside the Upanishads where they're talking about Vimana.
Yes.
Indra's dart and things like that.
Right. That's right. Some kind of mercury vortex, something. I don't know.
That's an interpretation of the text. The text doesn't use those words.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You have to be careful there.
Yeah, but we still want to spin mercury really fast.
Yes.
And we want to electrocute it.
How's that going for you, Eric?
We got drawings.
Okay. Wait, you're working on this?
Wait. Oh man. Rolls Royce feed us to the
send me your spinning mercury videos now.
It's not, as I said, it's not directly affiliated with Rolls Royce, but
okay.
It's a special group of engineers that discover these things and say, well, let's try it.
Yeah.
Where can we get as much mercury as we can find, which seems to be quite difficult.
It is.
Which raises a question: why is mercury so protected and like taken away?
Yes,
but it's poisonous.
I like the way you think, buddy.
yeah, it'll kill you. Didn't you know that?
Well, bleach will kill you, but you can buy it by the gallon for $3 a pop.
That's true.
Or you could build anti-gravity devices with it.
That's right.
The general public can't have that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the government doesn't want too many Mad Hatters around. Because that's what,
right.
You remember Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That's what they used to use in hat making was mercury.
Oh, that's why he was mad.
To give it the nap, to give it the sheen. So
wear that hat too long, you go crazy.
And then the Hatters would. With enough mercury and alcohol inside them, they would do some nasty things.
Oh yeah.
We do have, like you said, we do have some drawings, and the idea was to induce a current into the mercury to get it to spin around a Tesla coil in the center.
Yes.
That's some of the designs we had found.
Man, loving every minute.
But we have real work to do, and we never quite get down to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we know that feeling.
Well, you gotta get paid.
That's right.
Yeah, there is that.
Yep. You don't want to end up like Tesla.
Right. Living in a hotel room. So I have bringing this back on track here. We had a question about the so in the power plant idea, we didn't quite understand this, Chris, and that is how does the face of the pyramid act as a sort of a satellite dish to focus? Can you explain that to us a little better? We didn't get it. We didn't quite get it.
Focusing the cosmic microwave background.
Yeah, into the north shaft. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there would have to be a secondary reflector if it's collected off the outside. And that's just like, what is the reason for the indentations on the faces,
yes,
the concave faces, and that was just a suggestion. I mean, it may not serve in that capacity. It may serve in another capacity, but it was just an idea.
Right.
I was just brainstorming. And evidently not very well in that case, because it's like, okay, how would that work? If you have like a satellite dish, you have a large collector, and then it focuses into a secondary horn collector,
Right.
and the same thing for the Great Pyramid, in order to direct the microwaves down the northern shaft. So you collect it from a larger surface. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. So that's what I thought, that there would need to be. I couldn't quite get how it would work without something else there, but you're saying that maybe there was some other secondary part that helped collect it. That does make sense. And so I'm thinking now of I'm trying to remember, because Kyle and I did 2 episodes on Gantenbrink's explorations of the shafts.
Yeah.
And we basically went directly to his website where he just details everything, and we read most of it on the podcast. And there was one part, and he's talking about one of the King's Chamber shafts where they found the niches in the end, at the very end of the shaft, towards the outside part. And he was saying that wasn't on the other side, and I think that they found those in the north side. So that may imply that there was something, installed in the end of that shaft towards the outside of the pyramid, which is interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think Eric, you have something to say about that?
Yeah. There's also a curious feature in his data. If you look at the files that were created, it looked like he did it in AutoCAD.
Right.
2D side images of where they saw stone splits as they went up scanning with the robot. It turns out that we looked at that closer, and at the point in the northern shaft where this void has been found, there's a larger block and sort of an indention it's an upper block in the shaft, and it's much longer than the others. And our debate with one another, speculating why would this stone be longer, matching up with this void that's found, it may be a juncture for a wall or roof support for the new void they've found.
And that block has a protrusion on it, doesn't it, Eric?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain. It's difficult to explain without the picture drawing it. It's got a bump into the chamber, like a restriction for some reason. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I could come up with is possibly it's eroded away, but if it is an amplifier section, it's a point where something metallic would interface with the shaft to get the signal amplification or receive, transmit. That's speculation.
There's, if I may, there's one other little detail about that north shaft that Eric and I have talked about quite a bit on the side, is that if you look at Gantenbrink's CAD drawings, you see that as it gets down towards the antechamber heading into the King's Chamber, it makes several rather awkward turns. In other words, they went through a lot of work to make sure that hole comes out in a specific place.
Yes.
In the King's Chamber.
On our last tour, the tour that Robert was with us, we were all together. One of the attendees for the tour was a microwave guide designer. He was retired, but he'd done that previously. And he said, yeah, you guys, we didn't anticipate this, but he said the shape that they take to make these curves matches what I believe I'd see to maintain a guide to keep the proper dimension.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, and then also when you look at that side view, after it makes the S turn out of the King's Chamber, it does a shift in size. It steps. It's a smaller size coming out of the King's Chamber, and then after it makes its S curve, it does a step up in size of the shaft, and it's abrupt. and I looked that up in some microwave design guidelines. And if you want to do a longer transmission, you have to do the step up to stop an impedance loss, and
Wow.
it matches.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
I hope I explained that well. I don't have drawings, but
No, I mean, that's
So- Would that indicate that
it
that's
floors you.
the
It's like,
output?
holy crap.
yeah, I mean, that is the thing. It's like when something that significant is revealed, it's almost, I'm speechless. It's because
There's
It is.
more pieces. I mean, Robert and I sat. What's the hotel, Robert? We were at the German
The
hotel.
Steigenberger in Cairo.
We had nearly a day there just to relax, but we were going over details and we were curious. We got some drawings out and we discovered that the entry to the King's Chamber, if we're dealing with microwaves, if we're dealing with insertion of heat, energy into a space, we'd like to see that at a quarter wave distance from the walls. And it is exactly 1/4 of the distance into the chamber if you get it in and study that.
yeah, that was
Where
that was pointed out to me by a physicist by the name of Dustin Carr many years ago. That the quarter wave is important for a thermoacoustic engine, and the location of those shafts is a quarter wave down the length of the King's Chamber, which that's another point
Yeah,
to make.
that's really so. Okay, so this is another question we had when going through the Giza power plant, and this is: do you think that it ever worked again after whatever happened inside there that broke, all that stuff in the chamber? Do you think they were able to repair it, or do you think it was decommissioned after that?
I don't think they repaired it.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
those beams that are going across the ceiling, right? If they broke all the way across, it just doesn't seem like it would work anymore after that.
Well, it certainly reduced the efficiency of it, but I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, there are so many, I think, red herrings.
Okay, all right.
It's just like, I know in one of your podcasts you talked about the grapnel huck and the cedar wood and the round stone ball. And for me, as I look back, that was a red herring for me. And if I'd have thought about it longer, I probably wouldn't have included it in the book because it wasn't necessary. And it was probably, like you said, somebody, just trying to reach in there to see if they can retrieve something, pull
Yes.
something out of value. But it's one of the mysteries, right?
It is one of
Yeah.
the mysteries.
How did it get there?
Yeah.
It's one of the mysteries, yeah.
Well, you find a hole in the side of something. You want to see how deep it is. The first thing you do is drop something down in it.
That's right. That's right. But they would have to have been finding the hole from the top.
From the top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is also interesting. Yeah.
Which is another interesting rabbit hole we could go down, but it's kind of like related to the exploration in 2011 of the Jedi robot, where they were able to use a snake-like camera and look at the back of the Gantenbrink so-called door.
Yes.
And based on what that robot found and published, I actually created a replica of the door, an exact scale model of it, with the copper electrodes, as I call them, and actually demonstrated how it worked on the Ancient Aliens show.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it was like I was like the mad scientist in his lab, using muriatic acid and the zinc chloride solution and creating hydrogen and then trying to blow up the lab with a long stick lighter.
Well, that must have been fun to do on TV.
Yeah.
I know, yeah. I know how television is, and I know they would have dearly loved to see my eyebrows singed in that shot, but everything worked out okay. But yeah, but then that actually the way that was designed was kind of interesting, because it shows that particularly in the southern shaft, where I proposed that a dilute solution of hydrochloric acid was used. The hydrochloric acid solution would erode certain elements, and particularly the copper fittings and also the limestone. And the erosion pattern on the copper fittings would be reflects the function of that particular fluid switch, as I call it, so that you have the chemical solution that it's rising and falling, and the lower parts are affected longer than the upper part of it, so you have kind of a tapered erosion pattern on the pins.
Yes.
So that's one point to point out, and knowing that, then there would have to be some way of replacing them, and here we come back to that. The whole question of internal ramps, and are there internal ramps, and if they are, where do they go? There are some researchers that claim that yes, there are internal ramps, and I think that there are too. And so when we're just discussing the existence of a grapnel hook and a stone ball, and we jokingly mentioned, well, I would have to have been inserted from the upper end, and maybe it was. That's the other question. If indeed they had a passageway for maintenance workers to go up there to replace those copper fittings, which they would have to do because they were being eroded, what other work were they doing at the time?
Right.
And but even the red, they call it red ochre, but the markings on the floor behind the door resemble electrical symbols, and also seem to indicate the polarity of the switches. That's all that evidence is, I think, fairly strong to say there must be some way for maintenance workers to make their way up to the location of where that Ganton Briggs door is.
Yeah, and when we were going through your book, you talked about, was it in '96 or something? Somebody was digging and hiding it. Did you ever find out any further information about that? Like it was after Gannon Brink had found the doors, and people were finding bags of chipped stone.
Right. There was a huge conspiracy theory going around the internet. Then there was a few players on the ground at Giza who were feeding into it. Larry Hunter was one, was I think the principal one, and some others. But they claimed that Hawass was actually digging in the Great Pyramid, and he had a tunnel leading from his bathroom up to the pyramids. And he was secretly going in there, chipping away limestone. But there was a presence of burlap bags in the upper chambers.
Yeah.
Danley actually pointed that out.
Right. Where
there were burlap bags, and then of course Larry Hunter comes in and he's feeling the cable. There is electrical cable going up into the upper so-called relieving chambers, and so he's assuming that they're using power equipment, and so that's where the rumor was nurtured and broadcast to become a conspiracy that Hawass was digging to reach the Gantenbrink store. And then, of course, when they had the exploration in 2002, when they first did the drilling, they sent in an endoscope, which had a limited capabilities in terms of being able to look back and see what. I'll look up or look down. It just looked straight forward and illuminated this. Looked like a plastered block where the plaster dried too quickly and there were cracks in it. And so I said, "See, that's Hawass. He's patching up his work.
He's blocked the passage. Yeah,
not very well. But back then there was all kinds of excitement and scuttlebutt on the internet.
But no one's figured it out. Like,
they claimed that the official explanation was that the pyramid was closed for cleaning. It was closed for about 4 months. This was around 2000, the year 2000, something like that. And I was able to visit, the Great Pyramid in 2001, and went through, and it's like, they cleaned a lot. They, particularly the Grand Gallery was revealing, because that's where it revealed the scorch marks on the ceiling, that seemed to correspond with what the position of the resonators would be. So, they did a lot of cleaning on the inside.
Okay.
Did they clean out them slots?
No, I'd already done that.
You had already done that. Yeah, we're trying to start another, storm the Grand Gallery.
Yeah.
Movement, get everybody to borrow a soup spoon from the hotel and storm the Grand Gallery. They can't arrest us all. We'll excavate all those slots and then we can finally measure every single one.
Yeah, Kyle's upset that none of the Pyramidiot guys, Piazzi Smith or any of them, went in there and did a bunch of minute measurements on the slots. What's the deal? They spent all that time in the antechamber measuring all the, all those little features, and they didn't measure the slots? What's the deal,
guys? They didn't have a soup spoon.
One curious thing falling into this, on our last visit, I took a magnetic field indicator